Up next, we have a panel discussion that explores why it's so important to focus on upskilling and reskilling efforts as we work to build and diversify the STEM workforce. I am pleased to introduce your esteemed panel today. We will hear from Jack Daniels, President of Madison Area Technical College; Tori Powell, Management and Program Analyst for the USDA; Jaimeen Brombat, Director of Talent Acquisition for Abbott; and our moderator of the panel, Jamie Fall, Director, Upskill America, Aspen Institute. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie. We'll get things started.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. And good morning, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank Abby. What a great way to start the day. That was a fantastic overview of the white paper. And if you all haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet, I would just highly encourage that. I thought it was fantastic. So my name is Jamie Fall. I'm Director of Upskill America at the Aspen Institute. And Upskill America is an initiative of the Economic Opportunities Program at the Aspen Institute. We work with employers to expand, improve, and create education and training programs to create opportunities for frontline and entry-level workers so they have opportunities to advance in their careers. We focus particularly on frontline and entry-level workers because they are disproportionately female and people of color, people who have historically been the most disadvantaged, having opportunities to advance. We're so glad that you've joined us this morning for what promises, I think, to be a fantastic panel and a great discussion. We're going to look at why it's important to focus on upskilling and reskilling as we look to build and diversify the STEM workforce. We're also going to look at promising practices and how the shift to virtual learning both supports and hinders progress, a critically important discussion during this time. So the employers that I work with, I hear from them all the time that upskilling and reskilling are very critical business strategies for them to accomplish mission critical goals, such as equipping workers with the latest skills, retaining highly productive employees, especially those that are looking for opportunities to learn new things and advance in their careers, and also increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, let me just quickly turn to our panel. Very pleased to have all of you with us. Real quickly, I know we just heard their names, but their full bios are available in your program if you'd like to check those out. But our guests today are Dr. Jack Daniels, President, Madison Area Technical College. We also have Tori Powell, Management and Program Analyst for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then joining us by phone, Jaimeen Brombat, a Director of Talent Acquisition from Abbott. So all three of you, honored to have, really happy that you're here, and we look forward to learning from you. Jaimeen, if you don't mind, I'll start with you if that's okay. You're an HR leader for a major company. You always have to be thinking about talent, both current, immediate, future, and long-term talent needs for your company. Many of those trends and needs have shifted in the current workforce. Could you talk a little bit about what Abbott has been doing to shift along with those needs, and in particular, where upskilling and reskilling come in?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Jamie, and thank you, STEM Connector, for having me today. I'm proud to be here representing Abbott, that's been in business for more than 130 years. Today, we have more than 100,000 employees around 160 countries, working in kind of 4 specialty areas and 4 divisions: nutrition, diagnostics, medical device, and branded generics. When we think about reskilling and upskilling, the first thing we need to understand is where the organization is going, not going tomorrow or the next year, but really kind of think about 5, 10, 15 years out. And what's exciting and fascinating about healthcare is that we start to see this transforming now, right? We, for example, think about telemedicine, think about personalized medicine, think about smart body concept, and all of that. And we look at how digital technology is going to be a catalyst or an enabler for all of these things to come to fruition in the future. So we think about it in that context, and we look down to see our workforce and say, what kind of skills and capabilities do we need to have, not just for today, but then for tomorrow, in order to achieve where we need to achieve for the longer term, and some of these concepts that I talked about. What we also try to think about is, technology is not an absolute. So you can be super specialized in whether it's Java or Python or R when it comes to technology, but I think that will outdate us, right? Technology is going to evolve, and it evolves every 2 to 3 years. So the way we were looking at it at Abbott is we're looking at a set of integrated skills and capabilities. So combining some of the hard technical skill sets that will be required for us to get to where we need to get to, but then also looking at some of the non-hard technical skill sets, right? Leadership, people development, resilience, agility, emotional intelligence. These are going to be absolutely critical for us to think about as we develop our workforce, outside of just thinking about, well, I need this cohort group to learn Python, or I need this cohort group to learn R, for example. So we're thinking about it more holistically and looking at how do we not only create the expertise technically, but then how do we grow these people to be future leaders of the organization. And so I think that's what's kind of different and in the way we're looking at it. One of the things we also ask ourselves is how do we accelerate innovation and R&D, but at the same time bring it closer to the customer. And the example that I'll share with you is we have a vascular business that's based out in California. Our R&D center was based in California, but we needed to see how we get faster innovation. How do we get faster through kind of that R&D life cycle? And we made the decision about 5 or 6 years ago to move that R&D center over to Ireland. Now, the challenge was that we didn't have any R&D engineers in that plant or in that facility in Ireland. We had manufacturing engineers. So what we did is we ended up selecting a handful of individuals and a few individuals who kind of raised their hand to say, "Hey, I want to be part of this new R&D function," and we actually give them current skills. So we taught them how to be a clinical expert. We actually took them to doctor's office and let them understand how a doctor kind of deals with patients. We gave them training in biology and chemistry. Traditionally things that you wouldn't get as a manufacturing engineer. We also gave them university courses. And over the span of, let's say, 4 to 5 years, we grew that function from roughly 4 individuals to 50, and then ended up launching 5 different vascular products out of that center in Ireland. So I think that's a huge success story for us. And, in the grand scheme of things for all of Abbott, it's one example, but there are multiple examples that we're looking at in different businesses of how do we kind of continue to think about reskilling and upskilling our workforce to really kind of achieve what we need to achieve over the longer term. So, we're constantly looking at our workforce. We are constantly looking to see how we develop them to sustain for our future, which is to really kind of help people live their best and healthiest lives over the longer term. And this means how we think about reskilling. But then more broadly, we also think about how do we attract and hire and retain these individuals, right? So the reskilling, upskilling really kind of hits the employee base. But then from a talent acquisition standpoint, where I sit, we got to think broadly in terms of the overall talent pool. And we think about how do we go out and attract these individuals with a new set of skills and capabilities. And then once you get them in, how do we think about retaining?
Great. Thank you, Javine. That was very interesting. I appreciate it. Dr. Daniels, two of your colleges have always been very responsive to the changes in the workforce, especially as it relates to the local employers and their communities. So what emphasis are you seeing on upskilling, reskilling in response to employer needs in your community, and how are you responding?
Well, thank you, Jamie and STEM Connector. Reskilling and upskilling is key to the STEM industry. It also informs how we will educate in the future. As you suggested, one of the hallmarks of the community college is its flexibility in meeting business and industry workforce needs. This has become especially true during the COVID pandemic, but also the racism pandemic. At Madison College, we provide training to local businesses that is customized for their individual needs. We also provide training through our partnership with Black, Latino, and Hmong chambers of commerce, focusing on business development. We also have strong partnerships with community-based organizations because many of folks of color are coming through those organizations. And we need to be able to prepare them and to encourage them to take their potential into the industries that we're talking about in STEM. We are quite cognizant, however, many have lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And a recent statistic in Wisconsin states that over 50% of those individuals will not return to their jobs. But we do know that many of them have the potential. And then how do we prepare them for the jobs that STEM is requiring? Healthcare, IT, and STEM-related occupations remain in high demand. As we align our short-term, certificate, non-credit, customized training with employer needs, this is going to allow many individuals to be hired and be provided a career pathway. We are finding that employers have gaps in their labor forces and their skills, yet we realize that they have to retain a quality workforce. So it's necessary to identify what skills are lacking and provide training to meet those gaps. I'm also pleased that individual employees are challenging their employers based on their recognition that their skills are outdated. And they're asking employers to make an investment in them. This is great for retention, especially when it appears that employers are not just about the bottom line, but have equal concern for their workforce. In this environment, we must have an intentional focus on employees of color and provide them with opportunities for growth, and at the same time meeting employer labor and skill gaps. This undoubtedly is impactful on retention, but also is important in attracting talent. We've also seen employers, especially in healthcare, provide apprenticeship opportunities to their incumbent workers, reflecting upskilling and reskilling. UW hospitals and SSM Healthcare are primary examples of having much of their incumbent workforce being trained for future jobs. As I stated earlier, Madison College also responds to employer needs through customized training. And they do provide, and we provide short-term training to prepare incumbent workers to progress. There are several examples. We have developed embedded certificates and programs in healthcare. And as a way to look at that embeddedness and their success, we have developed badges. Those badges are for work progression. They go directly to the skills that employers are looking for and that we train for. And I think it's also important that we continue our ongoing discussions with our HR leaders, because they are the ones who can actually provide us some insight into the gaps that allows us to provide and to develop training that's going to be effective. Much of the training that is going to be effective, they can't provide, but their input is so key as we move toward more upskilling and reskilling of their employees.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Really appreciate hearing that. So, Tori, let's turn to you now. You've worked with youth programs, partnerships, the general public engagement there at USDA. How are you currently working to ensure the existing workforce is going to be able to meet the demands of today and tomorrow, especially as we're faced with an increasingly virtual world?
Great question, Jamie, and thank you, STEM Connector and Jamie, for providing this forum. From the outset of the pandemic, and even before then, our team has really looked at developing and implementing a public-private partnership strategy that leverages USDA's convening power to create new and or expanded access to existing low-cost, no-cost training opportunities for young people to gain access to tangible skills that they can not only use in their current workforce environment, but also in the future to meet future workforce needs. Relationships with our private sector partners have allowed us to better understand the state of the current workforce, including better understanding what skills are missing, understanding existing skills gaps, and relay that message to our higher education partners and education partners. What's been great about this strategy is that it's been super adaptable to the various stakeholders that USDA works with. From transitioning service members and veterans to communities in rural America. This has really allowed us to tackle some really challenging conversations around the state of the current workforce, what skills are needed, and how to actually get those skills into those communities. We've also done considerable amount of work internally, looking at how do we provide internship and apprenticeship programs that actually allow young people to apply their newly gained skills, right? So it's not just a opportunity for young people to come in and get an experience, but actually to provide tangible and apply those skills that they actually learned as they graduated. So we want to make sure that young people are provided an environment where they get an ROI from their investment in their education, investment in their time and energy and money, and actually can apply those skills in a real world setting. So those are just some of the ways that USDA is working to really take the feedback and work with young people and the youth serving organizations that represent young people, take their feedback and provide policy changes to our outreach efforts, and really provide an environment where upskilling, reskilling are part of daily conversations that we're having. Thank you, Jamie.
Great, thank you, Henry. So let's take a few minutes to talk really about the virtual world that we're all living in right now. Regardless of the pandemic, employers were already being asked to think more about upskilling and reskilling their current workforce to meet the shifting demands of industry. But with the increase of virtual and remote work, what are some of the actual benefits you're seeing in this area despite the challenging times?
I'd like to take this question. I'm seeing a couple of benefits. The changing landscape that recognizes the work being done remotely also helps in retaining a quality workforce. Quality of life issues for employees need also to be considered strongly. Many employees have families, and being able to work remotely provides them an avenue to maintain the connection and guidance that they give their families. Though I know, and I think it's already been stated, remote learning with K-12 students can be stressful for students and parents. The key seems to be able to manage and complete the task within the required time frames. At Madison College, we have a commitment to equity and inclusion in hiring. Many individuals may not want to relocate, but can provide substantial training and services remotely. This is also an opportunity for us to diversify our faculty. Yes, it's doubly important to provide a high level of learning and facilitation to faculty so that they can effectively teach remotely. But when you have an outstanding candidate who can provide excellent instruction or services and contribute to the college remotely, we would not want to lose that person simply because they live in another area or out of state. Additionally, upskilling and reskilling is occurring in this remote environment. For us, it is retraining and training faculty to deliver high quality instruction remotely, just as they had done in a face-to-face format. Providing student services has also changed, and we have to have training around that. So this remote environment and how we are actually evidencing our change and our ability to adapt to this new environment, we know that it has to be training for those who are delivering our instruction, but students need to be trained as well and to be comfortable with this environment. Because as they leave us, they're going to a similar environment that they may also be remote. I would also suggest that employee learning through a remotely structured and facilitated competency-based curriculum, the shifting of many of an employer's needs can be readily addressed.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you.
Jamie, this is
How about you?
Jamie. This is Jermaine. I'll add a couple points here. So some of the benefits that we're seeing, from a talent attraction standpoint, it significantly widens our talent pool, right? You're now not only sequestered or limited to a certain state or a certain geography. Now we're looking to attract people from different states, and you're looking to now attract people from different countries. And so certainly widens the talent pool, and not only widens the talent pool, but also diversifies the talent pool, which is equally important for us. Um, also think about groups like working moms, right? Working moms may would have had to make a tough decisions pre-COVID on how to kind of balance that work life um, environment, working whether for an organization, being on a full-time job, coming into work, or kind of managing kind of the home situation. And so I think that, again, we're bringing now more talent into the group. And these working moms can now continue to maintain their flexibility that they need at home, but then still now actually get back into the workforce, which is incredible. And that's great. From an employee standpoint, we're seeing employees signing up for more courses. There's more availability of e-learnings, which gives the employees the ability to sign up for those and better manage their kind of day-to-day activities, whether it's helping kids e-learning or managing their work, and then also doing some e-learnings, whether it's at a local university or even through some of the programs that we offer here at Abbott. Now they have the ability to do that on their own time, which might have been a little bit difficult before. This past summer, we had an intern program, and our internship program was fully virtual. And we increased the engagement on an app that we had developed for those internship programs, which allowed the students to communicate with each other virtually through the app. But then it also gave our executives tremendous amount of leverage to be able to leverage that app to do a lot of communications, a lot of engagement with those students, which we would have had pre-COVID a lot of limitations just due to kind of the local nature of the opportunities. And we're seeing even our intern programs to be more cross-functional and more collaborative, even working with individuals and managers and cohorts outside the United States. So I think we're seeing quite a few benefits moving into this virtual world.
Hey, and Jamie, I'll add
Great.
quickly to that converse.
Thank you, Tori.
Just really quickly onto that conversation. Almost immediately, right after, we all went to this virtual environment, we heard from our educational partners, our higher education institution partners, that they were in desperate need of digital content, content that they could deliver to their students, whether they be high school, college age, that, gave them a lot of flexibility in terms of how they consume that content. So we launched at the time what we thought was just a simple a speaker series, Faces of Agriculture and USDA, which was just meant to be something that was at a community specific in Chicago, right? But almost immediately we heard from our stakeholders across the country that they wanted in on that. So what was a small pilot program in Chicago ended up turning into this national speaker series that really put our STEM program managers in front of young people that look like them, right, which is an important part of this conversation. So we had Hispanic leaders in STEM at USDA talking about how their career journey, how they got there, what they did. These are drone pilots, right? So it's also expanding the definition of what agriculture is for young people. And so, we just had a conversation yesterday about the combination of agriculture and architecture. These are conversations that we weren't having prior to COVID because we were just busy doing the day-to-day stuff and reaching people in Puerto Rico and Alaska was time consuming, right? You had to fly to Puerto Rico and it's not like you could turn around and fly to Alaska the next day. But now we're having these forums where we can actually have those conversations with students in Puerto Rico and Alaska at the same time, increasing the knowledge base of what does STEM look like, what do STEM careers like, what does agriculture look like, and it's been phenomenal and amazing to see the hunger and the number of students that have been part of that conversation. In February, now this is our 7th series this month, so yeah, it's just been incredible.
Great. Thank you, Tori. I appreciate that. If you don't mind, Tori, we'll actually stick with you here for just a minute and continue one of the topics that you raised, and that's diversifying the STEM workforce. So upskilling and reskilling, of course, refers to the current workforce, but we already know that there are challenges with attracting and retaining diverse talent to begin with. So really, what role does upskilling and reskilling play in diversifying the STEM workforce, and how can we make sure to use these opportunities to support cultures of inclusion?
Yeah, again, great question. I think upskilling and reskilling provide enormous opportunities for organizations and their employees to gain access to new career fields. Employees from a variety of backgrounds, experiences now have access to career fields that were previously unattainable, and employer supported, which maybe were out of reach for them previously. This leads to higher paying jobs, and we've seen that in the way we've implemented at USDA. That's also increased the number of diverse candidates that are applying for jobs. So as organizations develop and implement their upskilling and reskilling programs, there's an enormous opportunity to integrate the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation as part of that program and not afterwards. We often see programs that are implemented and then afterwards we're having to go back and have the diversity conversation. But from the very beginning, upskilling and reskilling have the opportunity to really address some of these diversity, equity, and inclusion issues that we've seen. Part of the integration includes acknowledgement of the digital divide, right? Across the urban and rural spectrum. How is access to technology impacting various communities, right? So is it in rural communities, we've seen that broadband has been an issue. So how do we make sure that rural communities are not left out as we move into this more increasingly virtual world, right? So those are conversations and things that we can integrate from the very beginning, and include as part of the strategy rather than tackling at the end.
Great. Thank you. Jameen, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, certainly upskilling and reskilling plays a significant role in diversifying the STEM workforce. Additionally, I also don't see diversifying the workforce in terms of gender, race, ethnicity. I talked a little about integrated experiences. So I think diversifying the workforce, bringing together different perspective, to me is all equally important, but just not looking at kind of the race and gender and ethnicity perspective. You certainly don't have to rely on traditional education backgrounds. And I think that's what's so great about upskilling and reskilling, because you can take somebody with different backgrounds, educationally or not educationally, but then give them the opportunity to develop those skills and capabilities, whether it's STEM or something else in the field related, to really kind of build and develop that individual personally, which again, it benefits not only them, but then benefits the organization. So I think it definitely plays a significant role in diversifying the STEM workforce. An example that I'll use is just within our own group in talent acquisition. We were giving the people the opportunity to learn how to code. Now, you think about it, a group of recruiters who don't have an IT background or have a degree in computer science, but our hope was that if they bring that passion to the table and they want to learn a different skill set, who knows, perhaps there's a career change for them in order to get into an IT or a technology field. And we want to be the ones who are enabling that for those individuals and for our employees.
Great. And Dr. Daniels, anything you'd like to add before we go to some questions that we've received through the chat?
Yes, I would. And what I also focus in on, and I think it was stated earlier, this is right now the employers are in the driver's seat. But being in the driver's seat means that you have to have conversations with current employees and trying to determine what's their potential, what would they like to do. And this is really important to many employees of color. Oftentimes, employees of color are not at the higher level in an organization, but yet they have potential. Yet they can be facilitated in their learning so that they can move up. But part of that comes from what is the discussion between the employer, and I'm thinking supervisors and managers, and the folks that are in their units or in their departments. We have the same issue within our own college. And if we're looking at how do we move people upward, What types of skills do they need to have so they can go to a different job? Or what other additional skills do they need to have so they can improve upon what they currently are doing? And that's in many areas of the college. So I think it's really key about industries really working with their employees and being critical about how they see themselves as well as how they see the individuals and the workers and how they're positioning them for their future.
Really important information, and also a fantastic transition to one of the questions that we've had sent to us, and that is really what can employers be doing to do a better job of supporting their employees of color. Janine, anything you'd like to add there?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we all have to look at things differently. We've got our own uh, challenges ourselves, but we also have to look at how do we develop the workforce, not only for the broader employee workforce, but then also the ones that are underrepresented. We actually have 7 employee networks within our organization, whether it's Black, African American, Hispanic, Latinos, Asian, and I think there's a women's leadership organization as well. So culminately, and we have actual executive sponsors having ownership of those networks. And what we try to do is do deliberate training and providing skills to those individuals, whether it's having one-on-one with business leaders or whether it's bringing an external expert in with those specific employee networks to, again, help them develop their skill sets, whether it's for their current role or for their next role. That's something that we're highly focused on, and we're definitely doing that more and more now. So.
Great. Tori, how about you? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, in addition to what Dr. Daniels and Janine said, having honest and deliberate conversations with your employees about their experiences, what they're getting, what they're not getting in the office, can have tremendous impacts in terms of just making sure your employees feel like they have an environment where they can say, honestly, I'm not getting the training that I need, or honestly, I don't feel like I have the skills that I need without fear of retaliation or retribution, right? If I say, hey, I don't have the skills for this, am I going to be fired? Creating honest and deliberate forums for those conversations is truly, truly something I think employers can do, and it doesn't cost anything, right? You can set up a virtual environment, have a conversation with your employee. It doesn't really cost anything. The costs are so low to have that. A few months ago, we had a forum for first-generation professionals. There were so many USDA first-generation professionals that were experiencing the same things, and just providing that forum where they can interact with each other and ask questions and talk about different journeys, right, was impactful for our employees and didn't really cost us anything but our time. So I think creating those forums or having honest, deliberate conversations is something that we have to do going forward.
Great. And Dr. Daniels, you really led us into this. You touched on it in your last answer, but is there anything else that you'd like to add there?
We have affinity groups, and we're respecting of those affinity groups. But I think it's also important to understand for employers, and we're no different, is what is the commitment of the industry or the university or the college to diversity. And oftentimes, we don't recognize what our own bias are. And not to say anything about how do we feel about privilege. And it's important for the leaders of an organization to have those discussions, oftentimes facilitated, with their own bodies so that they can better address the issues and the needs of their organization. So I think that training is important. And I think the last part of that is, and we are doing this with our board of trustees, is having discussions with the board regarding what those futures look like, where some of that training should be, and how we can progress forward. And that's going to be key to our future as we move forward.
Great, thank you. So we have about 3 minutes left. Maybe we could do a quick lightning round for our last question. We have another question that came in, but I think it's really important that we should address. So we just talked about supports that employers should provide for people of color, but we haven't really talked about the same sort of support services for female employees. And obviously, during this current economic downturn, they've really been the group that's been hardest hit for the most part. So I'd just like to turn it over, see if any of you have any additional thoughts on what employers should be doing to support their female employees during this time.
I think the support of female employees go along with the same line. Understanding where they are, what types of emotional issues that are they dealing with, how can we assist with that? It might be providing them some other resources that will help them deal with some of their maybe some of the emotional issues that they may be coming through with, or how it's affecting them. You know, COVID and racism affects females in a completely different way. And I think it's important to understand and to feel for what those individuals are feeling and how they're being addressed. I think also it's the whole issue term about microaggressions and how are we working with those microaggressions that have a definite impact on how females are feeling and how they are responding to employer needs.
Great. Janine, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, it's all about listening, right? And having an understanding. So you got to be able to understand the point of view that the females have and the challenges that they're running into, and certainly develop programs within the organization to help address those. Certainly one solution doesn't fit all, right? So you have to be flexible. You have to be relevant to the group that you're trying to support. And certainly, you know, we have numerous programs at Abbott that help address certain populations and certainly female populations with different ways to and how to manage through these difficult times, whether it's COVID or you know, working remotely and so on and so forth. But I think my biggest thing is you got to be able to listen to your employees. And I've got a lot of employees on my staff that are females, and you know, for me, it's best to just sit down with them to understand where they're coming from, and kind of help them find ways, or at least help them find programs at Abbott that can help with their situation.
Great. And Tori, we have about a minute left. You get to bring us home here on this question. Any additional thoughts?
I think Dr. Daniels and Janine said it best. Having a listening ear, being empathetic, and having those forums for having those dialogues so that you can understand what your employees are going through, whether it's a race conversation, a gender conversation, an experience conversation, is something that I think we all should be doing and need to be doing, especially in terms of diversification of the workforce, upskilling, reskilling. It's all part of that. So I'll leave it on their words.
Great. Okay. Well, at that point, let me just, Tori, thank you. Jameen, thank you. And Dr. Daniels, thank you. Really appreciate the time that we've had together this morning. And also a big thanks to STEM Connector for this event and for giving us the opportunity to participate. If your organization is working to upskill employees, I would just encourage you to check out the upskillamerica.org website. We have lots of resources there to assist you and to assist employers as you think through your upskilling strategies. And again, just thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be here, and look forward to more great things from STEM.